Stop! You know what you're here for, and let's not waste any time, alright? Let's get right into it! Anime villains. The best animes have them, and you're here because you need to know how to make one. And there's 3 simple yet kind of complex things that you need to understand when you're making an anime villain. Alright, and we're not going to waste any time. We're going to get right into it. Step 1. First thing you need to understand is you need to understand what you're creating the villain for. Like, what's their purpose and what type of show you're creating that villain for. Okay, and let me explain. You need to know if you're creating a show like Dragon Ball Z, One Piece, Naruto, Hunter x Hunter. If you don't know what type of show your villain's for, you could create a villain that just doesn't fit the vibe of the show, right? Because when you understand what the vibe of the show is, you can, like, let's say you're trying to make a show that has vibes like Dragon Ball Z. Then you're not going to make a villain, most likely, that has a very deep and complex backstory and has all these things to him that you need to deeply understand to get who he is as a character. You're going to want to create a villain who is generally flashy, very powerful, who is trying to do something for very high stakes, such as the fate of the world, solar system, the universe, right? But if you're creating someone for Naruto, you're most likely going to want to create someone who has a little bit more of a backstory to them, right? Like, you're going to want to create someone with some philosophy and some depth. But that's not the only thing you need to understand. You also need to understand their purpose in the show. And that is something that can be understood a lot more easily than the previous part. Because the previous part, it's harder to understand, especially if you're trying to create something like nobody's ever seen before. But this part is a lot easier to understand. You need to know if you're dealing with a final boss or if you're dealing with a 1-episode, one and done, right? Because if you're going to make a villain, like they're a 1-episode, one and done, with no real depth to them for what the show has, like if you're a show that relies a lot on, you know, the characters gaining strength, if your villain is not that much stronger than your main character is at the moment, then you're not creating a villain that's destined to last long, right? You want to create something for the protagonist to strive towards. And you can't really do that if your villain is so close to your protagonist when they're first introduced, right? And that's if you want them to be your final boss. Now, if they're just there for an episode, that's fine, right? They can be there, be a little bit stronger, and have the character power up through them to make it to somebody else. But you can't have your final boss be that type of strength, okay? Now that you understand step 1, next thing you need to understand is step 2. Your character, your villain, needs to have some sauce, some drip, okay? And it doesn't, when I say it doesn't have to just be in their clothing or the way they look, okay? They could also act just so suave and cool that the audience grows attached to that character, right? Like, you can't make a villain that is just super lame and has really nothing. Like, if you're looking at a villain, right, and they look so lame and just disgusting, you want to see them getting taken down sooner. And I guess if that's the type of thing you're going for, then fine. But understand that you're going to have a lot of hatred towards the villain. And I'm going to be real with you. A lot of the villains that people might find to be their favorites aren't the ones that they hate from the start because they're just so evil and annoying and terrible It's the ones that are just so cool that you see him just out there, just jumping people. Like Madara, bro, he had the sauce and the smoke on him, right? If you have a character, they don't have to look cool, but if they have the hands on them, they got the smoke, you've made a villain that people will enjoy. But you gotta make sure that they have this component to them. Because when they be looking right, or they be just hitting the right way, your audience will get so much more attached to them that they won't mind seeing more of that character throughout the rest of the show, right? The sauce might be the most important factor into creating your character, because once you understand step one, that's fine. But if you can't put this part in, you can't really create the greatest villain possible. Now, if you're going for a show that has nothing but disgusting villains that you want them to hate, that's fine. But in my opinion, from what I've seen, the better villains are the ones that that you could understand people liking more, right? The ones that people actually like to see in the show. Now, there is one more thing that needs to be understood when making an anime villain, okay? And that is, they either need to be some type of pure evil or have some type of backstory. And this point requires me to, create a difference between a villain and an antagonist. An antagonist could be somebody who may not be evil, but they're just opposing the main character. Now, a villain, on the other hand, that's a totally different situation, right? A villain is somebody who is evil. Like, they have gone to the dark side. They ain't coming back. Now, with that understood, understand that a villain, if you're gonna put them in anime especially, their backstory better hit if you're gonna go with that sad backstory route, okay? And their backstory either needs to be said when they are, first brought into the show, when they're fighting the main character, or when they are about to die. And I'm not gonna lie, when it's right before they die, low-key it's kind of cheesy and it's used a lot, but it hits the hardest because it's a character that you don't understand why they're evil for. They're just raw evil and you're like, no, take them down. But then you hear where they're coming from, and then the sad music comes on, they're always sitting there as a child out there in the rain, and their parents weren't too good to them, and XYZ things happen that makes you feel terrible for them. Like, you feel bad, and then you begin to not understand why they're doing it. Like, you understand where they're coming from, but you still think what they did was wrong. But that empathy that you can make somebody feel by making a good main or making a good villain, especially this has to be the main villain, right? That's gotta have that super sad backstory. That's one route you can go. Or they gotta be straight evil. Like, off the jump, they gotta be saucy, but they also gotta be straight evil. Like, they gotta roll in and be like, I'm gonna kill you, your mother, your father, your brother, your cousin, your best friend, your best friend's mother. Like, everybody just gotta be slaughtered off rip. Or not even off rip, but they just gotta show that they are not there to play around and for you to empathize with them. They are there so that they can kill and they can conquer, okay? And those types of villains hit in a different way. Because, then when it comes down to it, you're out there rooting for the villain, and then you have that full no, not rooting for the villain, you're rooting for the main character, bro. But sometimes you are rooting for that villain, because, you like watching him, and you're like, man, he kinda tough, low-key. You hear him talking, you're like, ooh, he's spitting, bro. You know what I'm saying? But, if you're going to go with one of these two routes, you need to really stick with it, okay? Because when you stick, if you try and give them a super sad backstory, but also make them raw evil, you're gonna give them conflicting feelings about the villain you're trying to create. Which means what you need to do is, if you're gonna make an evil villain, they gotta be evil through thick and thin. Their morals ain't changing. Okay? They do things for themselves, they are selfish. Or they are evil because they feel that is the hand that life gave them. Right? And once you understand those three things, you can make any anime villain, bro, and they will be heat. Okay? Like, it'll be something that people will truly be able to delve into and enjoy. Now, the personality of the villain, you know, what these backstories are, how they're saucy, what their purpose in the show, that's all up to you. I'm letting you go, and I'm gonna let you do that, because that's the great part about anime. You get to create it for yourself. But, like, just make sure if you follow these steps, you'll be set. Alright? My name's CJZX2. Y'all know where to find me. And I'll see y'all in the next one.